this section of the essay which addresses what Shrika was talking about. In what way did India's religious inheritance energize the protests against xenophobia? In that it generated fresh meaning rather than remain centered on a fight for religious equality. It generated fresh meaning rather than remain centered on a fight for religious equality. This is how we usually frame the question. That we are fighting for equality for minorities. In what way did members of the majority who contributed substantially to the protests also reshape them through resources available to them from a long religious inheritance? I suggest they did this by having recourse to a tradition of rationality within religion, expressed over millennia through philosophical tracts, songs, and poems. The matter of equal rights in connection with the practice of religion is not really a religious preoccupation, it's a constitutional one. Religious preoccupations in India are often polysemic, to do with meaning and arriving at clarity of thought. It is within this tradition that the protests need to be located too. Xenophobia wasn't fought in the anti-CAA protests through the historic syncretism, an old cliche of seminar rooms, attributed to religions in India. It was fought through religion's historic access in this country to rationality. One evening in 2016, my family and I were watching Against Better Judgment, a Bengali language news channel, one among an array whose hallucinatory atmosphere makes tabloid journalism seem balanced. After 10 minutes, I said, "We never watched this channel, let's not start now." Instinctively, I went to another channel we no longer watched either, the government national outlet Doordarshan, which had, this was revised for an American journal, so we have these kind of perspectives on these things, which have not been changed, which had been largely made obsolete in the 1990s with the advent of satellite TV and become synonymous with boredom. That may have been why I went to it, to be out of sync and far away from the tone of the contemporary. So you see, I'm an activist at every point, even when watching TV. What was airing at that moment in Doordarshan was, in a sense, true to its ethos, an interview with the Dalai Lama. I switched off inwardly, but it was good to see him as perennially cheerful as a family elder. I have categorized the Dalai Lama in my subconscious as a hybrid of family elder and world ambassador, and have suffered and been happy with him without ever feeling I needed to listen to what he said. His words at that moment spoke directly to me, given the sort of news we had just been exposed to on the Bengali channel, and I returned to them later. Quote, this is from the Dalai Lama, "Reason can never be defeated by the irrational. Reason is based on pramana, proof or evidence. In the end, reason is always victorious." Until that moment, I had missed the fact that rationality was a crucial ground for religious thought. By religious thought, I had, because it was the Dalai Lama who was speaking, Buddhism in mind, and in a quick retrospective reassessment of what I knew, also Upanishadic poetic philosophical texts, the Gita, the Jataka tales, which I'll refer to in passing a little later, Sufism with its privileging of direct contact, which is a variation of Praman, over mediation and second-hand interpretations, and the songs of the Bhakti movement. It seemed like an extraordinary error suddenly to have identified the history of reason or reasoning with the West and or with science, and to have proceeded to either celebrate or critique it on that basis. Those who either castigated or acknowledged the value of certain cultural manifestations, formations, lineages, or movements, say religion or the non-West or Romanticism, did so often largely on the assumption that their main drawback or appeal was that they were anti or non-rational. This was how this debate, worn out by now, was cast, and its terms still pervade our thinking, so that if we speak up for, say, religion, we do so to remind ourselves of the significance of what can't be accessed through rationality. The Dalai Lama's observation set a chain of associations into motion in my head and made me realize that rationality has a history that is much older and a meaning that's richer than the ones we take as givens from the situations in which we place them. Religion's refinement and honing of rationality are incisive and have been essential historically to dissent.